Good morning, rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here. Hope you're feeling good today. Click that like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content that you're watching today. If it's your first time here, we'd love to have you come back and join us. What's the schedule? Show schedule. I think you guys know. Quest Fanning, Clementine, KV Andy, Q Faye, Floby Tenderson, the lovely Steffi P for Liberty. Hi, Steffi. Miss you. What's up, Andy Opperman, Kermode Bear, our boy, Studio 314. How's everybody doing today? P Ridge 62 joining us here this morning. All right, let's hear that crowd roar. Yes. What's up, Well Run Riot? How you doing, Joni Rankin? Nice to see your shining faces here today. Glad to have you. Don't forget, click that like button on your way in. All right, you ready to rock? Let's do it. Got lots of great content for you today. Bill Maher, is he getting red-pilled? He sat down with Neil deGrasse Tyson on his podcast, sat around smoking a J, talking about the universe, life, the universe, and everything, which of course included Bill Maher chastising Neil deGrasse Tyson for coddling many of these college students, these lily-livered ninny-muggins, cotton-headed ninny-muggins, we'll say. I'm not going to say all the bad words this morning, but I do have to warn you that I've got a bunch of clips of Bill Maher and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I've got some clips from Bill Maher's show last weekend where he's talking about liberalism, Western civilization. Sounds like a conservative to me on a lot of these things. And I know what a lot of people are going to say. Well, he's still got Trump derangement syndrome, so he isn't fully red-pilled yet. Okay, well, that may be true, but I still think that Bill Maher is starting to become more based and red-pilled. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Not everybody agrees. That's okay. Hey, shut up. We don't have to agree, but you have to be quiet. It's my show. It's my time to talk. I'm going to play the clips that we have, and we'll see what you have to say. John Renkasi says he's not getting red-pilled. Maher has stated that several times. Well, I've got some other things that might change your mind by now, by the end of the show. Green Hills Goose, yayo, what's up? What's up? Nice to have you all here. Thanks for joining us, Barney Styles, as well. Okay, yes, we'll play those clips. I'm looking forward to having a guest on for you today. He's going to come live from Paris, France. Oh, from Gay Paris. Our friend Pascal Emmanuel Jobry will be joining us. Je voudrais aller à vous, c'est le fromage en bon pantalon. Pascal Emmanuel Jobry will be joining us today live from Paris to talk about genocide. What is genocide? Why does everybody call it a genocide? What does genocide actually consist of? People throwing around these words and they don't know what it means. I don't like it. I don't like people using words that don't mean anything. We'll talk about that today with our friend, his very first time today. Pascal Emmanuel Jobry will be joining us today. And it'll be 2:30 p.m. in old Paris. He'll be talking to us then about the Israel-Hamas conflict. At 8 o'clock yesterday, did you see Steven Crowder dropped the manifesto of the Nashville shooter? I'll slow down. The transgender killer at a Nashville Christian school, whose manifesto was suppressed for several months, was apparently leaked to Steven Crowder, who dropped it yesterday on his popular show here at rumble.com. And we're going to speak to BX Bullet about that. She's an expert, a private investigator, and an expert on mass shootings. She's going to talk to us a little bit today about what she thinks the manifesto means or what it doesn't mean. She's got an interesting POV that I think is going to surprise you. And so we haven't heard from BX Bullet in a while. She's going to be joining us this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. You don't want to miss it. We're glad to have it. Whatever you said about cheese in French, I'm all for. Slow it down for you, studio. C'est le fromage à mon pantalon. C'est le fromage à mon pantalon. All right. At 8:30 a.m. today, we're going to speak to Camelia Peterson. You guys love CJ, don't you? We're going to hear from Camelia Peterson this morning at 8:35 a.m. today. A nurse in British Columbia by the name of Amy Hamm is going through disciplinary hearings for admitting that there are two genders. What? An activist lawyer is set to cross-examine an expert witness for this nurse who is accused of transphobia. In November of 2020, the British Columbia College of Nurses and Midwives launched an investigation into a nurse educator by the name of Amy Hamm. It took a 332-page report for them to bring down the hammer on her, mostly composed of social media statements and things by this Hamm. She's a nurse and a women's rights activist, mother of two. She's going through a long struggle session. She's, I think, 17 or 18 days into a disciplinary hearing with the British Columbia College of Nurses and Midwives over her acknowledgement that two genders exist. Is it funny or is it sad? It could be both, right? I think it's both. What's up, Eric Dondero 99? Nice to see you, Eric. Boy, I know Eric from first time I ever came into contact with Eric Dondero was in 2008 when I was working for the Libertarian Party back in the days. Eric Dondero goes way back in liberty activism before even me. So it should be a good show today. We've got a lot of great content, and I'm excited to share with you some of these clips that we've got. Bill Maher decimates Neil deGrasse Tyson for coddling woke college crazies. That's the headline at redstate.com. It seems as if Bill Maher is taking the red pill. I know a lot of people are resistant to that idea. They're like, no, he's still crazy. Okay, there's still a lot of things that I think I don't agree with, but I got to say, give it up for credit where it's due. Let's hear him talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson. And FYI, and I know that I do get a lot of parents who watch this show and listen to this show with their kids in the car. I'm sorry to do this to you today. However, these are nighttime clips for a morning time show, and they are not censored. There will be F-bombs. There will be D-bombs. There will be bombs over Baghdad. So I'm giving you the heads up right now that there will be explicit language in this one, and I apologize to you for that, but the news is the news, and I don't have an editor team that sits around and can cut all these clips and then censor them and re-upload them, and it takes hours and hours. I don't have the time for that. Sorry. Here you go. Bad words and all.
Surely there's a portfolio of jokes that would still work on a college campus. Surely.
I would hope not. From what maybe some college campuses, the ones you read about are fucking insane.
You've given up on an entire generation, and you don't know how to make them laugh.
I have given up on any place that doesn't even remotely attempt to believe in free speech and thinks that anything that they hear that they don't like, that they don't agree with, is violence. These people are fucking nuts, and you should be calling them out. Somebody like you, who has standing with kids, should be not joining them.
When you're doing
what parents do. You're taking the path of least resistance, and therefore hurting the kids and yourself. Parents ruin both their lives. They ruin their fucking spoiled kids' lives, and they ruin their own lives because the kids rule the roost. So that's what you're doing on a national level.
I'm feeling more like...
Hey, chicken, what did you think about that? Oh, that Neil deGrasse Tyson should raise a chicken. Gotta say, that was some good stuff. Bombs over deGrasse. Bombs over deGrasse. Good morning. How you doing? I'm your host of the Wake Up America show. It's getting a little weird this morning. I must be getting secondhand smoke from Bill Maher's J there. Or it looks like a blunt. I don't know what he's smoking, but some kind of wacky tobacco. If you're just tuning in, don't forget to click that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Isn't this the best place to hang out in the morning? You're going to get all these clips. Were you going to see this on any other television news show this morning? I don't think so. Hell no. That's why you got to subscribe to the Wake Up America show, because we got the best clips. We talk about what's going on in the world so you can stay informed. They also had time to talk a little bit about trans women in women's sports. Let's take a listen.
We have men's sports and women's sports. And if the best team in the WNBA played the worst team in the NBA, the score would be 1,000,000-0. Can we organize society around that basic point with this?
I love Neil deGrasse's face on this, and he does not like this. Can we just go back it up for just a second so we can enjoy him squirming, please? We appreciate that. David Lee, I'm glad that you enjoyed the handwritten letter with your Donald Trump toilet brush. Yes. David Lee says Neil NDT is an idiot. Look at him suffer. I love watching him
played the worst team in the NBA. The score would be 1,000,000-0. Can we organize society around that basic point with this, of course, proviso that we protect and respect people who do not fit into it?
Let's segregate society between dark-skinned people and light-skinned people, because that nature made it that way, and that's how it is. So
nature did make it that way.
You are,
and it's not segregating.
Well, there was a
segregating anything.
That attitude 150 years ago was
2 years ago. You act like this was yes, right. Lincoln. This was a big issue in the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Trans people. That's right.
No, I'm talking about black.
I remember that from
I'm talking about
1861. Yes, I remember those debates.
It was 1860.
And Lincoln was all about getting trans. Oh, for fuck's sake! You're a
Oh, Bill, get it, Bill.
That's more interesting for the viewer. So if we can split wrestling into 10 categories, and that becomes the wrestling match.
But all men against each other.
Correct. So, so again, now, I get
sort
that.
of key point.
Okay. Okay, so...
For reference, those who may not have heard, last week we had a great show where we talked about a jiu-jitsu match where the women were supposed to be competing against biological males, and the women decided to just walk out. They said, we're not going to compete in this tournament. And I got to say, good for them, ladies. Listen, this isn't going to be some situation where you're going to be able to call on your allies or, be able to harass or hector the men in your lives to change these policies, because these policies weren't put in place by men, and obviously no vagina, no opinion on things like this, right? So therefore, ladies, you're going to have to be the ones to change these policies, because you're the ones who want these policies. There's going to have to be a female civil war if you want to change these things. And frankly, I'll be cheering, but I'll be cheering from the sidelines. Let them fight. All right, can it be a lingerie bowl? Okay, Austin, shut up. I mean, weird.
All I'm saying is, what is it that makes the man the man? Is it the hormones? Okay. Is it, if it's the hormones,
no,
and you decide to give yourself a different cocktail of hormones, I'm making this up, by the way.
No crap, you're making this up. Yes, you are making this up, Neil. Yes,
I'm saying it should happen this way. It's a way to start thinking about it.
It would be
maybe the track meets have hormone categories,
and maybe giving yourself the wrong hormone.
Track meets have hormone categories. Can you imagine? Hormone categories. Like, you're competing against somebody not on the basis of weight or gender. You're competing against somebody based on like your hormone levels before a match. That it would be quickly moving into like weird, like 1984, Brave New World kind of
hormones is deleterious to your health. Would you not admit that? Do you think we can just safely do things like?
Look how uncomfortable Neil deGrasse Tyson is. You see how big a swig he took of that drink? Watch that again. Watch how big that drink is. Look at his face.
Hormones is deleterious to your health. Would you not admit that? Do you think we can just say?
Yeah, it's that when you go for a sip and then you realize you're going to need a little bit more. He goes for the double.
Do things like this.
So you feel this way because you're so deeply concerned about the health of the people who are trying to find their place on the gender spectrum. You care about their health so much that you don't want them to go through that?
It's not something that keeps me up at night, but when the subject comes up, I care about them like I care about all people. So if there is something...
You do, by the way. You think about all people.
Of course.
Yeah, I give you that.
Oh, okay.
You think about all people. No, I'm being sincere.
Yeah, I do. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Old school liberal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want all people to have, make this very challenging world that we live in better. So that's why there's honest debate about this issue. And why don't we cut it off?
Keep debate honest. Yeah.
Why don't we cut it off now? Because we're not going to solve this. We said our piece.
Oh, God, it is so infuriating to watch Neil deGrasse Tyson sit there and justify his ridiculous opinions about transgender men and women in sports. It's ridiculous. Yes, Eric Dondero, you got it right. His body language is speaking volumes. Absolutely. I've always liked Bill Maher. It doesn't mean that I agree with him on everything, but I got to say, at least he has an open mind. And I think he is starting to take the red pill. Take a listen to this.
Why this one place? Why does this arouse, especially among young people? I mean, the young people who hated Trump because he wouldn't condemn the people with the tiki torches, talking about Jews were... You're the ones with the tiki torches now.
I don't think...
Oh, damn, jeez! Bombs over Baghdad. Bombs over Baghdad. You're the ones with the tiki torches. Now that deserves 2 applauses. Give it up. That's a red pill. That is a big red pill. Look at Fareed Zakaria's face on that one right there. I love the body language in these interviews as Bill Maher is dropping these truth bombs on here. I'm really looking forward to speaking to my friend from Paris, Pascal Emmanuel Jobry, who'll be joining us here at 7:30 a.m. this morning. We're going to talk a little. He's been dropping red pills. I'll tell you, if you're not following him on Twitter, he's a great follow. Looking forward to hearing from him on this one. But I just watch not Neil deGrasse, but watch Fareed Zakaria's face when basically Bill Maher calls him a Nazi.
Talking about Jews rule, but you're the ones with the tiki torches now.
I don't think.
Look. Ooh, yeah. It's a spicy meatball. Quest fan and dropping the fire. It's true. Green Hills Goose says Neil sold out to Hollywood. He knows better. Very true. P. Reg 62 says Bill Maher hit the nail on the head with this one. Good God, you love to see it. Do me a favor, will you guys? Click that like button on the channel if you haven't already on the show, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, because we got some more juicy stuff for you. Now, before we go all gaga completely for Bill Maher, let's not forget he still does suffer from Trump delusion syndrome. And honestly, I think things like this are a bit of a cop-out, because my secret conspiracy on this one is that I think that and I guess it's not a conspiracy because it's just one man, it takes two people, but my theory on this is that he actually doesn't believe the Russia collusion hoax. I think that the Trump stuff for him is reflexive. Maybe part of him, justifies his Trump derangement syndrome by saying, oh, I think that Trump is illiberal in many ways, and therefore he doesn't support him. And to an extent, that may be true. However, I think that the Trump derangement syndrome stuff and his belief in the Russia collusion hoax, I think that's a way to ensure that he isn't completely cast out from Hollywood. Because I think that if Bill Maher were to go full red pill, as you and I all know, there's no way he could continue to work. He would be canceled. He'd be done. And he's on the cancellation list already. He is up for cancellation. They have the humanitarians have the guillotines ready to go, and Bill Maher's name is on the list. So that's why you get takes like these, which are quite frankly kind of dumb.
Concede elections.
Did Hillary concede elections?
Yeah, of course Hillary conceded.
She said he's an illegitimate president.
When did she say that?
She said that in 2016. She said he knows he is an illegitimate president.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. And I take responsibility for those parts of it that I should. And so I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level. I don't know that we'll ever know everything that happened, but clearly we know a lot and are learning more every day, and history will probably sort it all out. So of course he's obsessed with me. And I believe that it's a guilty conscience in so much as he has a conscience.
After the election?
Yeah. Russia collusion, what was that if not denying the election? They made up a story, which was a hoax.
Well, it wasn't a hoax.
Yeah, it was.
Well, just
it was.
What wasn't true? What part
the
of
Russia collusion? The idea that
there was collusion with Russia.
The idea
there
that
was absolute collusion with Russia.
Is that why he won the election, do you think?
Partly. It was a very close election. Yeah, you don't think Russia could sway 77,000 votes in 3 states? Of course they could.
No.
And they did. Partly through social media, partly for their propaganda there and what they were trying to do there, which was very successful, cost about $100,000. And then,
the Russians swayed the election with $100,000. I don't think so, Bill. Anyways, but why do I think Maher is getting red pill? Well, it's because of monologues like these, which I think absolutely killing it. And I know that these are the kinds of monologues that are getting him on the list.
And finally, new rule for all the progressives and academics who refer to Israel as an outpost of Western civilization like it's a bad thing. Please note, Western civilization is what gave the world pretty much every goddamn liberal precept that liberals are supposed to adore.
Amen. Thank you. And the funny thing is about this is that I have actual anarchists and libertarians who, of course, are on the side of the Palestinians and Hamas and are angry with me, of course, for supporting Israel in this conflict, in this civilizational conflict. And I actually had a libertarian yesterday ask me, what is Western civilization? What are Western civilization's principles? What are the principles of Western civilization? How stupid do you have to be to claim to be a libertarian and to not know what the principles of Western civilization are? Did you not take? I mean, I guess was it an elective? I thought that we were required to take Western civilization. I took the AP class, the college class for credit when I was in high school. And I still remember the principles of Western civilization. I don't know how you could be so stupid as to say on one hand, I'm a libertarian and not realize that libertarianism is a Western value. You absolute utter cretins. Here are the principles of Western civilization.
Individual liberty, scientific inquiry, rule of law, religious freedom, women's rights, human rights, democracy, trial by jury, freedom of speech. Please, somebody stop us before we enlighten again. And since one can find all these concepts in today's Israel and virtually nowhere else in the Middle East, if anything, the world would be a better place if it had more Israels. Of course, this message falls on deaf ears to the current crop who reduce everything to being only victims or victimizers. So Israel is lumped in as the toxic fruit of the victimizing West.
Boy, weren't these just the exact same points I was making in my debate with comedian Dave Smith the other night? You know, I knew when I joined the circus that I would be surrounded by clowns, but every once in a while, couldn't we actually have something other than the clowns running the circus here in the Liberty Movement? Couldn't we actually see some of the people who are credible, maybe a high wire trapeze artist or something else, right? Let's see the elephant show or something like that. Must we be ruled by the clowns? Thank you, Bill Maher, for making the exact same points that I made, that libertarians, leftists, they're woke on foreign policy just like they are woke on nearly everything else. Critical theory is the view of society as oppressors and oppressed.
All marginalized people live better today because of Western ideals, not in spite of them.
Mark straight. Yes! And that's capitalism, Bill. And you don't want to say that word, do you? You don't want to say the C word, do you, Bill? Because you know that if you said that the reason why Western civilization has been able to bring people up out of poverty and to give us the kind of lifestyles that you enjoy right now as a very wealthy liberal in the West is because of free market capitalism, and you won't say it, will you, Bill? You won't say the word, because even though it's true, Bill, even though it's true, you're too scared. You don't want the Illuminati to cancel your show. You're too afraid. You've been canceled before, haven't you, Bill? You know that they'll come and they'll take you down, that the Illuminati, that the lizard people, the reptilians, they'll come and they'll take your precious HBO show and you won't be relevant anymore, Bill. But I say you're scared. You're afraid. But don't be afraid, because we will win. The West will win. Western civilization will win.
Martin Luther King used Henry David Thoreau's essay Civil Disobedience to help shape the civil rights movement. The UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights owes its core to Rousseau and Voltaire. Cleisthenes never showed up for a sexual harassment seminar. But without him, there's no democracy. The cop who murdered George Floyd got 21 years for violating his Fourth Amendment rights, an idea we got directly from John Locke, who no one in college would ever study anymore because he's so old and so white and so dead. So Western. Yes, that's how simple the woke are. It's never about ideas. If it was, would they be cheering on Hamas for their liberation? Liberation? To do what? More freely preside over a country where there are no laws against sexual harassment, spousal rape, domestic violence, homophobia, honor killings, or child marriage? This is who liberals think you should stand with? Women there should be so lucky as to get colonized by anybody else. And for the record, the Jews didn't colonize Israel or anywhere ever except maybe Boca Raton.
All right. Well, I'd love to play that for you. Maybe we'll finish it a little bit later. I've got a great guest coming up for you next. Live from Paris, Pascal Emmanuel Jobry is the author of the Accelerationist Substack. He's going to talk to us a little bit about these claims of genocide when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericashow.com.
expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to wake up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accuse.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Do me a favor, will you? Click that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you come back and join us. Every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time, the Wake Up America show streams live. What do we stand for? Well, we stand kind of for those principles that Bill Maher was just talking about in the segment before, right? Individual liberty, right? The right to a fair trial, not being against cruel and unusual punishment. You know, all those Western civilization principles that so many people today just either don't seem to understand or flatly outright reject. Well, you know, not only is the problem that, it's not the problem that our liberal friends no, I'm going to bastardize Ronald Reagan here on this introduction, embarrass myself, but the Ronald Reagan quote where he says that it's not that our liberal friends don't know so much, it's that they know so much that isn't so, right? They're very intelligent, they're very well spoken, but everything that they know is wrong. All right. Well, we've got someone here who can clear up some misconceptions, like what does the word genocide even mean? Everybody's flinging it around these days, and honestly, I think they're using the term a little bit too loosely. Methinks the lady doth protest too much. Joining us now to discuss that and the conflict between Israel and Hamas, the War of Civilizations, is the author of the Accelerationist Substack, that's a good name, Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, joining us live right now from Paris. Good morning, Pascal.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for joining us today. I really enjoyed your tweet. You said you were being sarcastic because you were retweeting someone who was talking about the IDF softening targets around a hospital using bunker busters on underground tunnels surrounding the complex. Your sarcastic retweet of that was to say, but wait, Israel is a genocide war crime state. Why didn't they just flatten the Hamas HQ? Instead, it looks like they're doing pinpoint strikes, preparatory to a ground assault to minimize civilian casualties. You say, wow, who could have predicted this except literally any effing sane person who knows anything at all? Quite a bit of sarcasm, but there's definitely an important point to be made. Maybe you could suss it out for us.
Yeah, I mean, so like this, we get this thing and I I can tell that I'm getting old because we've had this debate, especially in the 90s and the 2000s, and it sort of went away with like Iron Dome and the wall. And so the stuff in Palestine sort of simmered down. But it's the same thing every time, which is that terrorists hide among the civilian population. Like in Gaza, they literally pick out the hospitals and the schools to use as their headquarters. I mean, it's awful. And so in anywhere civilians get hurt, civilians get especially hurt when you have terrorists using civilians as shields. That's why the civilians get hurt. And every time Israel gets blamed and they're like, ooh, it's this, they're just hitting a hospital for no reason at all, except that they're comic book villains. Like, no, like it's a normal country. It's, it's basically a democracy, just like France or Britain. It's not, it's not North Korea. And it's a regular country. They try to minimize civilian casualties. Maybe sometimes you can criticize this or that, but like, they're not, pointing at the map and cackling evilly and going, "Oh yes, today we will strike the hospital, and tomorrow the daycare." No, of course not. They're normal people defending their country, and so yeah, sure. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes you can criticize them, but like, they're not doing genocide. Like, that's ridiculous.
Well, tell me this. So a two-part question here. One, what are people using the term genocide too lightly, perhaps, on either side of the equation? And then on the second side of things, can you answer a question? This is a debate that I had last week. People or who are of my ideological ilk tend to be on the opposite side of this conflict, unfortunately. But they say that Gaza is an open air prison. So is there a genocide on one side? One part of this question, and the second part of the question, is Gaza an open air prison? Can you answer that for us?
Yeah, sure. So on the genocide thing, well, you were talking about the values of Western civilization. Well, one of the values of Western civilization is the notion of mens rea. So you have to have a crime in the Western system, you need two things. You need a fact and intent. So genocide is the intent to wipe out an entire ethnic group and, carrying out that intent. And obviously that's not going on in the Middle East. And the reason we know that is because the population of Palestine has gone up several X since 1948 when Israel became independent. And so usually when there's a genocide, the population goes down. You look at the population of Jews across the 20th century, goes some around 1941, there's like boom. You look at the population of Palestinians, it's just a straight line. So that tells you, it's sort of pretty obvious when a genocide is occurring. And it's important to keep that definition alive because genocides do, fortunately rarely, but they do happen. And the problem is when you inflate away these sort of like the currency of certain words, like big crime words, and you just throw them around. It's like, oh, I stubbed my toe. That was a genocide. Well, you make it harder to confront actual genocides. Like Darfur, for example, people have stopped talking about Darfur, but like that was actually a genocide. Like that was an attempted genocide. Like it's important to keep those, to only use those words when it's actually warranted. And so the open air prison, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, first of all, there are two borders to Gaza. You've got a border with Israel and a border with Egypt. And so in order to keep the borders closed, Israel can't close off Gaza on its own. Like physically it can't. So the fundamental problem with Gaza, I was talking about how Israel is not North Korea. Well, Gaza is kind of North Korea. Like you have to, like Hamas, they're basically ISIS, and they have a totalitarian regime inside Gaza. Like they control everything. They just shoot people who disagree with them, and whenever you open up corridors, they're going to use them to smuggle weapons and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff, like some humanitarian aid is allowed in, blah, blah, blah. They keep digging tunnels and so on and so forth. Is it an open air prison? Yeah, kind of, because Hamas runs the prison.
That was my argument as well. I had a debate on this last week with the person who was saying that Gaza is an open air prison. Sometimes they call it a concentration camp. They use those words, but the person didn't go that far. But when they said an open air prison, my argument was if that were the case, then Hamas would be the jailers in this situation. But of course, everything is Israel's fault, despite the fact that Israel has done more for the Palestinian people than all of the 22 Arab nations combined. There are no other nations in the Middle East who have done more for the Palestinian people than the people of Israel, who owe them nothing. Let me just reset real quick, because sometimes we get people tuning in live who might want to wonder who we are and what we're talking about. If you're just tuning in, good morning. I'm the host of the Wake Up America show, and I'm Austin Peterson. We're glad to have you live here with us now. Don't forget to click like and subscribe as you sit down and join us here for a conversation this morning over coffee. I'm speaking now to Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, and he's joining us now live from Paris to talk about the conflict between Israel and Hamas. What's your take, Pascal Emmanuel? I can imagine it's sort of a different view of things from old gay Paris versus here in the United States. I mean, I would say that your country is far more liberal, but I mean that word really has got so many multiple meanings, and the differences across the between the United States and Paris, it's so different. So I mean, has Parisian liberalism, has it made its last stand? I mean, what is the situation in Europe right now, looking at this conflict from the Paris level view?
I mean, the reality is that the most important fact of French life now is sort of unrestricted Muslim immigration, primarily, but not only from North Africa and West Africa. And so I think that it's changed a lot of people's minds, and the reaction to this, like you saw this also in the UK a lot recently, but also a little bit in the US on like college campuses, like all these people waking up and going, holy cow, like you have these giant protests by people who are just like full-on Hamas supporters. And the combination of the fact that Hamas, sort of live streamed themselves doing the worst atrocities, and it is different, when you read about it in the newspaper and when you can watch the videos, and the fact that you had millions of people across Europe, and maybe not millions in the US, but like significant numbers still, who went, oh, that's awesome.
What are your
sort
thoughts,
of
Pascal?
Shocked a lot of people.
For sure. Pascal, what are your thoughts on the irony of the position of the left, who argue that the indigenous people have a claim to their lands and they should be able to have their sovereign homelands, and we believe in self-determination when it comes to the Palestinian people? But then when it comes to Paris, France, or when it comes to London, United Kingdom, then it should be open borders, and then anyone should be allowed to come in. Yeah. Do you note the irony?
Well, it works both ways, right? I mean, Palestine has always been diverse. Palestine is a land of diversity. Anybody who claims that the Israelis arrived recently is a conspiracy theorist. You can do this you can do this both ways. I think, my fundamental belief is that every nation, every people has a right to self-determination, has a right to its own country, to its own borders, to decide who comes in, who doesn't. And they don't need to justify to anybody. Just like I don't need to justify, if I decide I'm not going to let people with green socks in my house, maybe that's stupid, but it's still my right, and I don't have to justify to anybody.
I saw you had retweeted someone earlier this morning. He says the only way America and the larger West can survive is via substantial deportations. This should be the platform of every conservative politician going forward.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe that. I agree with that. I mean, like we, for the past however many years, like the leaders of the West have just allowed it people indiscriminately. And like it's too much. Like in the United States, nobody even knows the number. Like, people say, oh, it's 15 million, which is crazy. But actually, it turns out it's a number from like 1995, and like nobody's run the math since. In France and in Europe, we have these wonderful courts. But you guys don't have crazy courts in the U.S. They basically like enshrined the right to family migration. So basically, if you're related to somebody who's already here, you can come in, which, so it's not on the basis of like you have this amazing science degree. It's not on the basis of you started this amazing business. It's not on the basis of, we check whether or not you're a radical jihadi. It's just like I happen to be related to somebody who happens to be related to somebody who was here in 1973. And it's like, that's not sustainable. And we're seeing, enclaves of large numbers of people who sort of reject our civilization, reject our way of life, and it's not working out.
Pascal, tell us your response to the Pope Francis calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
This is difficult for me because I'm Catholic.
That's why I asked.
Damn it.
That's why it's fun.
I mean, obviously I disagree. I as a Catholic, I'm allowed to disagree with the Pope on issues like foreign policy. That's not religious dogma. But I don't like it. It's like your dad. Like, you're allowed to disagree with your father when you're an adult, but you don't like it, and you don't like saying it in public.
Why don't you agree?
Well, I mean, the idea of the ceasefire sounds nice and neutral, because it's like, oh, I just want peace. I just want a ceasefire. Ceasefire is temporary. Blah blah blah. But it's like saying, in June 7th, 1944. Oh, I just want a ceasefire.
I just murdered your family. I just took your grandma as hostage, but I'd like to ask for a ceasefire. It does sound a bit ridiculous.
It's like I punch you in the face and you go like this, and right before the punch lands, and go ceasefire.
Yes, yeah,
like
yeah.
Objectively, depending on when the ceasefire occurs, it's going to objectively favor one side or the other. And right now, the side that a ceasefire would favor is Hamas, obviously. They just did their thing, and now it's Israel's turn to throw the punch.
Can we talk about the anti-Semitism question here, Pascal? Yeah. Because, you being a Catholic, you're probably aware that, obviously, you don't share it, but there is a strong anti-Semitic streak throughout Christianity, just as much as there is through Islam, right? The three Abrahamic religions have been at each other's throats since their inception thousands of years ago. There is a religious aspect to this conflict as well, is there not?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've spent some time in the Middle East, and like one point I made on Twitter is you have Palestinian Christians, and Palestinian Christians in general, that's not true always, and it's changing, but in general, they really don't like Israel. But they're also not throwing rockets or blowing themselves up at bus stops, because you can find exceptions, but like most of the terrorism is done by Muslims for the variety of reasons that we wouldn't have time to get into. But like, different religions represent different cultures, which have different ways of looking at the world and different ways of acting, and so. The anti-Semitism. I mean,
can I cut you off, because I wanted to say, I was reacting to a tweet that you had said, I believe last week, and it really stuck out with me, and it was about right-wing anti-Semitism, right? Which you had described in a way as, we was kangs until the Jews came in,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. Or can you, I mean, it's a very funny way to make a point, and I sort of echoed it last week, but can you explain the we was
Sure.
kangs?
Yeah, yeah.
Right
So
wing
this
anti-Semitism.
right. So it's like so we was kings is the Afrocentric idea of like, we built the pyramids and the pyramids were also spaceships. And everything bad is the fault of white people.
Right.
There's a certain strain among Black people in the US and everywhere saying this, and it's wrong, and it's a way of like dodging of blaming all of your problems on other people. And so sort of, yeah, I agree. Like right-wing anti-Semitism, I agree with myself. That's true. I agree with my own tweet, which I don't often do, but yeah, it's Willis Kangs for white people. It's blaming all of your problems on, this sort of external force that's
The
sort of,
Jews.
and you're the victim, right? You're the victim. It feels so good to be the victim. Oh, it's all other people's fault, and you're holy and blameless. But like,
We
it's
was
very
kangs. We was
comforting. That's why
kangs
even
until the Jews came
yeah,
along and decanged
yeah,
us.
and it's like, oh, who caused immigration? It's the Jews. It's like, well, not really. I mean, there were some Jews, sure,
The
and
Jews
you're
are the
allowed to
fault of
notice,
immigration. Yes, they say the Jews are the
but
fault, are the ones who are flooding us with immigration. The Jews are the ones who are flooding us with pornography. The Jews are the ones who are flooding us with degeneracy and filth, and they're doing this to undermine Western nations, et cetera, et cetera. And they all, everything comes down to the Jews. That's what we hear. And so, I mean, it is infuriating to see, because this is a concept, if we're going to talk about it in loftier terms, right? I call this, and I talk about this a lot on my show, we call this a high external locus of control, right? I have a high internal locus of control. I am the master of my own destiny. Outside forces may have an impact on my life to an extent, but ultimately I am the one who's in charge. But conspiracy theorists, right-wing anti-Semites, left-wing anti-Semites, people who see the world as being controlled by an international cabal of international Jews and or the Illuminati or the Bilderbergs or even the WEF, right? Like they think that other people are responsible for everything bad that happens. It's the Jews' fault that I'm a loser. It's the the Muslims' fault that I can't get a job, right? It's blaming your problems on someone else. But this is kind of like, this is endemic, right? Most people, we all want to blame our problems on somebody else. It makes sense, doesn't it?
yeah. I mean, that's why it's sort of mental poison, and if it wasn't, if it didn't cause this sort of like pleasant feeling, it wouldn't be so successful. It wouldn't work. This meme, this idea wouldn't be so successful. And like, this is, one of the things that we're not allowed to talk about, because the entire sort of left worldview is based on this. There's something addictive to like, playing the victim, to like telling yourself, oh, it's all everybody else's fault, and things are being done to me. There's a kind of like, and like, we all feel that, like in our relations, like, when you have an argument with your wife or your husband, it's like, oh, it's her fault. She's the one who's wrong, and I'm blameless. And like, when you tell yourself that, you feel like,
I feel much better.
That sensation, that's the drug, that's the addiction. And like, you get addicted to that feeling, and so you want more, and so you tell yourself more of those stories, and before you realize it, you've become like the most insufferable person on the planet, and you believe all of these nonsense ideas that you need to tell yourself to keep giving yourself that sort of high of like self-righteous victimhood.
Well, most people would say I am an expert in being the most self-righteous person on the planet, so I can comment on that. Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, I'd like to have you share with our listeners a little bit about your blog before we let you go. You write a Substack called The Accelerationist in right-wing libertarian circles here in the United States. We think when we call something accelerationist, we mean accelerating the decline. Get it? Like we want to overthrow the government by having it, blow up to the size of as massive as it can until it finally collapses, so that we can have a revolution of freedom. But I'm not sure if that's what you're saying when you call it accelerationist. What is accelerationism? What to you? Why is your blog called that? And where can we find it?
So it's accelerationist.substack.com. Accelerationist.substack.com. Visit, bookmark, send it to your grandma. It's not paid yet, so don't be afraid. But give me your email so I can ask you for money later. And so acceleration so it's two kinds of acceleration. One is political, which is acceleration. I sort of mean it in the way in which you've described, but I mean it more in terms of like polarization, because both sides are doing this, and like at some point and so I want to see that. And the other acceleration is technology, basically. And so it's like, if Peter Thiel, rockets to the moon, to Mars, all that stuff. That's the other, apart from politics, that's the other thing that I care about, and that I write about.
Excellent. Well, I like your work so far. You're a great follow on Twitter. My moderators over in the chat have already dropped your x.com profile. I'd love it if they're listening right now, they do me a favor and drop your accelerationist Substack link as well, so people can follow you over there. It's free, but you will be asked for money later. Don't worry, I ask them for money every day. Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, thank you very much for your time today and for joining us. I appreciate your point of view. Hopefully you'll come back and join us again real soon.
With pleasure.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. What do you think of Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, live from Paris? Oh, Gay Perry. Wasn't it wonderful? Somniferum 75. He's got the inside track. He says, thank you, AP and Steffi, for bringing in interesting people. I wouldn't have found this guy otherwise. Probably. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, he's really popped up on my radar only like a few weeks ago. And I'm always looking for guests that I could say, oh, wow, the Wake Up America show crew, they're really going to love it. So if you love the Wake Up America show because you get to meet new and interesting people before you kill them, just kidding, then why don't you support the show today and get yourself some delicious coffee at the same time? Speaking of asking for money, over in the Wake Up America show's merch shop, we have got some delicious coffee for you. And you have seen, by the way, that we've got a new coffee flavor, Martha's Mint. So freaking delicious. You've got to get it. It's so good. Here's some coffee ASMR for you this morning. What do you think, huh? Why don't you try some Founding Flavors? If you haven't tried Founding Flavors yet, can I ask you a question? What's stopping you? And if it's that you don't drink coffee, I get it. I understand. But is there anything else that's having you hang back? Maybe you're like a slave to another brand. Well, don't forget, one, that a lot of these big brand coffees that you're drinking are taking your money and using it against your principles, right? Starbucks is funding people to go have abortions in other states, right? And Black Rifle Coffee threw Kyle Rittenhouse under the bus and called you guys all racists. So do me a favor, buy coffee from somebody who doesn't hate you. Buy coffee from somebody who is actually supportive of your values and who works every single day to try and find guests like that for you for the show. It's not just in your best interest from a flavor perspective, it's in your best interest from your ideological perspective. It's time for us to band together and to support causes that support causes that support your causes. Do you support those causes? There you go. Get some coffee, yo, says Studio 314. Check out the whole line of Founding Flavors coffee at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. We keep adding new flavors. We're going to be adding, we've also got some changes that are coming. We're going to be adding K-Cups here very soon. We're not ready for K-Cups yet. Joni Rankin's drinking some Adam's Patriotic Perk this morning. Lovely, lovely. Clementine doesn't like ASMR. Well, you don't like it when I talk to you like this, Clementine. I'll tell you what, I'm going to talk like this until you buy some flavors. About that, Clementine. You found it flavors. I'll stop giving you this ASMR. So So sweet, so delicious. And it doesn't give you that stomach ick, right, that you get with a lot of other coffees. Somebody yesterday was like, yeah, I used to drink coffee in the morning, but I can't because the problem is it makes my stomach feel a little sour. Well, I have not had that problem. I have that problem with some coffees, but I have not had that problem with Founding Flavors. So I tell you what, buy a bag, and I tell you what, if you don't like it and it gives you that sour stomach and you don't want it, I tell you what, I will refund your money. All you got to do is send me back the bag. I will buy it back from you and give you a full refund. So really, you have absolutely nothing to lose, because if you buy a bag of Founding Flavors coffee and you don't like it, I will take it back for a full refund. There you go. Check it out at AP4libertyshop.com. All right, well, BX Bullet TV, the transgender shooters manifesto dropped yesterday. BX Bullet's going to be on the case. She's a private investigator. She's going to talk to us about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, you know, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Goose Lodge in Jamestown, Kansas, your home away from home. Choose the comfort and privacy of our individual rooms, each equipped with its very own locking door and en-suite facilities. Or bring the whole family and make memories in our communal space. Snuggle up on our plush recliners or share a meal around the dining table that comfortably seats 8. Our kitchen is armed with everything you need, from a microwave to a full-size fridge. For a bird's eye view, book the Eagle's Nest. Enjoy the privacy, storage space, and its very own toilet and shower. For just $450 a night, reserve the entire lodge. Perfect for reunions or retreats, accommodating up to 8 guests. And remember, Snow Goose Lodge is a haven for kids and dogs alike. So bring the whole family. Book your stay now and get 20% off your first booking using the code WAKEUP.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Glad and thankful to have you here. How's everybody doing today? Today's Tuesday, November the 7th, and some of you have already got your Christmas trees up. But why is that such a bad thing? I see you guys are kind of going to war in the comments. It's like Israel versus Hamas. Calm down. My Jewish wife, Stephanie, loves Christmas, and she didn't get to celebrate it for like 31 years, she says. She's making up for lost time, and she's decking the halls with boughs of holly. Fa la 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 la, la 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 la. Well, you guys just relax, okay? Cool off. Maybe have a nice, delicious cup of Martha's Mint coffee. You guys saw that apforlibertyshop.com dropped the new coffee last week. That's from the help of my lovely wife, Stephanie. Martha's Mint, delicious founding flavors coffee, available exclusively at apforlibertyshop.com. All right, well, let's deck the halls and have a nice time with our next guest, who has to join us for quite some time. You guys remember old BX Bullet? Well, now we're just going to call her BX these days. I think it works, especially because if you find her on Twitter, she's BX on X. But if you found her on Twitter, you forgot that it's X. BX joining us live. What's up, BX? How you doing?
Hey, Austin. It's good to be back.
Glad to have you here, BX. We're thankful for your time and grateful to have you come on and talk to us, especially with your background as a private investigator. You have a really interesting take on the Nashville Shooters Manifesto, which dropped yesterday. Stephen Crowder got the scoop. I read it. It was really a bunch of just insane scrawlings. A lot of times we try and find meanings in these things, BX. It's like trying to administer medicine to the dead. You can't logic something that's illogical, can you?
No. And you know, I wish that we would stop calling this a manifesto, because like you said, this was just some mentally ill, scribblings, really. Usually when we say manifesto, we're talking about some kind of like persuasive essay that these guys write and disseminate online intentionally so that people can see what their ideology was, right? That's the whole point of putting it out there. And that's the whole reason that this manifesto was suppressed in the first place. Well, that's not exactly true, but I'll dive into it. So the thing about Audrey Hale's manifesto that made it different is that it was actually a physical, tangible item, whereas most of these guys are writing in and putting on 4chan. In which case, yes, it still gets scrubbed. Trust me, every single time it will get scrubbed off of any social media platform. However, obviously they can't get it 100% because it's already gone on 4chan. But in this case, since it was the actual physical journal, it was, they had to factor in estate laws and the fact that it was a physical possession. Now, that said, there have been a group of people advocating that it's in the public interest to release these documents, which I strongly agree with. And I've been advocating for this the entire time. I think that every single mass shooting that happens, they should be 100% clear and transparent on not just the motives of these people, because I don't know that that's as important as the influences behind these people. I'd rather know what chat rooms were they in, what internet forums were they on, who was in their ear, who were they talking to, and that's really when we get into the weeds here and really start dissecting what's going on with these kids. So that's kind of that kind of gives me a little bit of heartburn hearing people talk about, oh, it was suppressed because she was trans. No, they're suppressed all the time. And there are people, like yours truly, who advocate for the transparency of the government in all of these situations all the time. And we're constantly rebuffed. So, I really just hate seeing things like this politicized by anybody. There's really no difference in my mind when the right tries to politicize a shooting for something like the shooter being trans or being anti-white or whatever the case may be, versus somebody on the left blaming guns and trying to politicize it for a gun control narrative. You're trying to use this to drive a political agenda when that's really not necessary to understand what's actually happening and try to work towards a solution.
What is the lesson here? Because I mean, there's too many politically charged topics involved with the Nashville shooting specifically for me to not at least think that it doesn't have some bearing on this case, simply because we are talking about a transgender individual. They did refer specifically to the people that she wanted to kill as, you know, the F word that we can't say anymore. And she did harbor resentment towards these people that she saw of a particular ethnic group, right? Namely white people.
Sure.
I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to draw some important conclusions there, BX. So I mean, I think you can at least understand why people would. There are malevolent actors who want to use it for their own agenda no matter what. But then I look at that objective and I say, this seems to be a person who has a mental illness. And in underneath that scenario, in those circumstances, it makes me wonder if we aren't properly labeling the problems here. How would you respond to that?
Well, I would respond by pointing out that it's fine to feel that way, and it's fine to want to try to understand what's causing these people to have hate, towards people that is strong enough to cause them to want to murder people. I do have a problem lumping all of this in with mental illness. You know, it's like I said all the time, we've had mental illness forever. And to me, I don't usually equate mental illness with a person who's ideologically driven to murder a bunch of people. I don't like to conflate that with mental illness. I think it's a very specific type of mental illness, right? But as far as what you're saying about the motives and ideology, it's fine to want to dissect that and get to the root of it, but you have to do it for all of the shooters. Okay, that means that you also have to do it for the ones who are white supremacists. You have to do it for the ones who are neo-fascists. You have to do it, for the anti-LGBT ones, and that's fine. But, if you're only hyper focused on one single incident, that's honestly an outlier and a data pool of hundreds of shooters, then it becomes a little obvious that you're trying to push an agenda when you're not kind of giving the same focus to all of the other shooters out there who maybe espouse an opposite ideology. I feel like there are people out there like me and the people I work with, the investigators I work with, who've been really deep in the weeds trying to show the public what's happening, trying to open up a discussion, trying to advocate for transparency every single time there's a mass shooting. And we're not on Rumble with 200,000 live viewers. We're getting banned off YouTube, banned off Twitter, attacked, suppressed, censored. Well, that's a good question. I think because one of the arguments that I make all the time is that from my research, and what I have found is that there are groups of people who actually use these events to drive a political wedge between the people of America. And they do this by seizing on an opportunity to cause people to fight over gun control, fight over CRT, fight over LGBT and transgender kind of ideologies, right? And these people specifically get what they want when we fight over these things. There's been a plethora of right wing. I don't really like to call them right wing because they're really, fascist, neo-fascist type people who've gone on these shootings, and their manifestos even gloat about this. The manifestos that are scrubbed, it's very hard to find them online. They gloat about this. You guys are going to fight over gun control, and that's exactly what I want. I want America to fall. I want there to be a civil war. I want you all to ban guns so that you'll fight over it, because I want the West to collapse because I hate capitalism. And it's very nuanced because not every mass shooter is going to be the same, right? Some people are just crazy. Audrey Hill might have just been
Unabomber,
crazy.
Kind of like Unabomber mindset kind of stuff. But you made a good point earlier when you were saying that mental illness has been around for a long time, but these mass shootings are relatively new in American history. So there's got to be some causative factor out there, BX. There's got to be some causative factor that is contributing to the rise of these kinds of terror style mass shootings that are happening. And if it's not mental illness related, or at least if it's not entirely mentally illness related, there's got to be some other causative factors, right?
There is. And the causative factors, it's actually just terrorism. There is, and you know, this is very strange to me because while doing this kind of work, everybody in my team just started to kind of come to the same conclusion at once. What we're seeing here is some kind of coordinated attack. I do personally believe that a lot, not all, but some of these shooters are being groomed. When I say groomed, I mean radicalized, indoctrinated. This is and people kind of, they don't like to hear this, but it's the same thing as ISIS did. Right, it's the same thing as these homegrown domestic extremists who are committed to jihad now. Right, how does that happen? Well, a person's already mentally ill. They're already vulnerable. They already have a lot of hate. They're already at a really low point. And there are people out there, terrorists, who can identify these vulnerable individuals, isolate them from their family and friends, put them into a setting where they can radicalize and indoctrinate them. And then that their entire purpose is to get them to go out and commit terror attacks. And you know, you might be like, well, I've never heard of this before. It's a concept called accelerationism, militant accelerationism. It's relatively new. And everybody in counterterrorism, Homeland Security, the FBI, these are words that they already know all of this stuff, right? But for some reason, they don't want us to know it. It's not private information. It's not super secret squirrel or hidden. I mean, it's all out there in papers and in grants. If you want to look at counterterrorism grant funding, and you're seeing all the research into this particular type of terrorism, but for some reason, they don't want us to talk about it publicly. They don't want it to be a household word.
So I am sympathetic to the points that are being made by some of our friends. I think Barney Stiles over in the Rumble chat this morning says that the drugs are new. I'm not convinced that SSRIs or these mood stabilizing drugs are causative because, one, if someone is already mentally ill, then the pills came after, right? And so the mental illness might have been the problem,
yeah,
right, rather than the pills themselves. Although some people do claim that they think that, you know, one thread in common, they say, is you know, that these people are on pills. Now that could be a correlation causation fallacy, but I'm not. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm open to that argument, and I think it's definitely a conversation worth having. What are your thoughts on these, you know, SSRIs?
It's a bad argument. It's a bad argument because, you know, well, first of all, one of the first things I started to do when I really started about 2 years ago to dive into this mass shooter research was created an entire database that was very extensive and contained a lot of this information. And I used the help of a couple of different archives online too that already had some of this info. But if you look at mass shooters going back to like, you know, Charles Whitman, the UT shooter back in like the 60s, I think, right? And you chart out like, you know, yeah, obviously you're going to see that psychoactive drugs have increased over time because we have more psychoactive drugs now, right? However, when you look at it, it's actually not what you'd expect. Like if you were going to make that claim, I would have to say 100% of them would need to be on drugs. And right now what we see is about maybe 50%, maybe half of them have been at some point in their life on some kind of psychoactive drug. But there's a few really big problems with this argument, okay? The first is, like you said, correlation does not equal causation. And there's a huge confounding variable when you're talking about this, because I think we can all agree that mentally sane people do not go on mass shootings, which means that the people who are doing this are already mentally ill. Therefore, they're more likely to have already been prescribed SSRIs. So you can't necessarily prove causation there. But the other flip side is that if you're looking at half of them weren't on SSRIs or half of them weren't on psychoactive medication, maybe being on psychoactive medication could have prevented them from enacting this attack. So the thing is that this argument's been getting shelled out there for a long time. And unfortunately, there's really just no good way to actually prove this without some kind of controlled study, which we obviously can't do. And it's a really illogical argument for a lot of reasons that you already kind of figured out, you know. And also I think that it can have some dangerous consequences to try to convince these people, certain people, that they don't need to take medications. It'll make you even worse. Well, maybe that person's a paranoid schizophrenic and their hallucinations are telling them to shoot people. We probably don't want to be telling them not to take their medications. That actually might be a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, that main shooter, that was a classic example. That guy needed to be
Right.
on drugs because he was clearly hearing voices that were telling him that, who were when he was at the bowling alley that he eventually shut up. His
Very
family
sad.
members who said that he went there said that he was hearing people talking about him, saying negative things about him while he was there, but nobody was talking about him and all that stuff. I mean, those are clear signs. Those are the signs that we should be looking for in order to prevent the next attack, shouldn't we?
Well, I get a little pucker factor there because one thing I heard Steven Crowder say, which I didn't agree with. I heard Tucker Carlson say the same thing about the Highland Park shooter, which, as you know, I've been very involved in that investigation, which is also being massively suppressed and mishandled. But they do this thing where they go, well, look at this person. Should this person have been able to buy a gun? Weren't there any warning signs? Like, Steven Crowder saying, well, why didn't anybody say, hey, this person's mentally ill, maybe they shouldn't have a gun? But he was referring to the fact that she was trans, not that she was exhibiting like actually violent signs. So you gotta be careful when you're saying stuff like that, because what you're really doing, all that argument does is promote red flag laws, which obviously someone like Steven Crowder shouldn't be promoting. Obviously gun rights are for everybody. Gun rights are for LGBTQ, Christian, Jewish, doesn't matter, right? Now, obviously, if you're having auditory, visible hallucinations and they're telling you to kill people, that's something that's, going to be left up to you, that person talking to a therapist. And then that therapist does then have the, the authority to kind of escalate that if they see that somebody's showing violent signs. But we have to keep it narrow. We have to say, this person is exhibiting signs of imminent violence, imminent danger to themselves and others, right? We cannot let that slide down to, oh, I don't really like their ideology. Oh, they hate white people. I know it sounds bad, right? But they hate black
so
people.
much fun,
maybe,
and we
right?
but people like us would make so much more money if we just jump onto those tracks, because it's so profitable to just say things like that and get all the clicks and all the likes and all the hearts and all the subscribes. But instead, BX, you're holding us accountable here. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Glad and thankful to have you here. I'm speaking to @BX on X over on x.com. She's joining us now, first time in quite some time. She's a private investigator, and if you like the content that you're hearing, don't forget to click that like and subscribe. You're going to hear stuff here that you won't hear anywhere else. And of course, don't forget to visit wakeupAmericashow.com and our merch shop at ap4libertyshop.com. At BX on X. So you were talking about the Highland Park shooting. I'd like you to go into that. You brought up an interesting video yesterday when you were talking about the lawyer of the father of the shooter. Could you just, for many people, of course, we have sort of the goldfish memory. I think actually goldfish have better attention spans these days than the average American. Remind us of what the Highland Park shooting was, and then this story that you unearthed this week. Would you share that with us, please?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just kind of, I am on X, but I also just started a Rumble channel. It's brand new. It's BX on Rumble. And I'm also on Twitch and Kick as BX Streams, but BX on Rumble. I'll try to put maybe one of my viewers in here can drop a link in chat, but I have a video up that really explains it well. If you want more information after this, really suggest that you go check that out. The Highland Park shooting happened on the 4th of July of 2022. Highland Park is a very wealthy, affluent suburb of Illinois. This was the shooting where it was a 4th of July parade. The shooter allegedly was on the rooftop, firing down at the crowd. 7 people were killed. A little boy was paralyzed. 40-something people were injured, and it was really, really tragic. I had become involved in this investigation because, like I said, I've been investigating all of these mass shootings for a pretty long time. But this one was different because a lot of the things that I was seeing were just not adding up. Things were just kind of weird on this one from the beginning. There was a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that didn't really make any sense. And so I did a pretty long, lengthy investigation on that shooting, and I released a few videos, which prompted some people close to the case to contact me. And then I ended up getting way too involved. But I have actually talked to the parents in this situation. They've been going through a catastrophe. And in particular, I've talked to the father who was recently charged with 7 felony counts of reckless conduct, 1 for each death. And this is Chicago, so it's really no surprise that they're trying to push a super, super harsh gun control narrative here. But they're definitely trying to set a precedent by charging the parents of mass shooters now. That should alarm people, right? It's especially alarming in this case because what the dad actually did was he sponsored his son's firearms license when he was 19. His son was 19. His dad truthfully filled out a form that said, I, the father, can own a gun. And it didn't, that's it. He truthfully filled out an affidavit. And then 3 years later, when his son was almost 22 years old, so keep in mind, he could have bought a gun himself, right? Now the prosecutors are coming back and trying to actually allege that he caused those deaths by sponsoring his son's car 3 years ago. Well, my whole point is in this video, again, it's BX on Rumble, and you can watch the video about it, which is that a lot can happen in 3 years, right? And as a parent, right, of an adult, right? I call him a kid because I'm kind of old, but 21 years old, that's an adult. Is the dad supposed to be, over his shoulder watching everything he does on the internet? And, but the other issue in this case was that the prosecutors played dirty. So first of all, this was a completely unconstitutional charge because the son, who's still alive, the alleged shooter, has not gone to trial, which to me, and I'm not a lawyer, maybe somebody in chat who's a lawyer can explain how you can have a trial for somebody whose guilt hinges on the guilt of a third party who's presumed innocent. It makes no sense, right? The reason that that's also important is because some of the evidence from the alleged shooter's case was going to be seen in the dad's trial, which would affect the son's right to an impartial jury. So it was a constitutional nightmare. What happened? And so I had actually planned to go to this trial and sit in the courtroom physically. I had a flight out to Chicago this morning. But yesterday, on the first day of the hearing, there was a curveball thrown. The prosecutor at the very last minute, I'm not 100%. I don't want to get into too many details about what happened there, but essentially the prosecutor tried to subpoena a witness that presented a conflict of interest, and Bob Cremo, the dad, his lawyer basically was forced to withdraw from the case less than 20 hours before the trial began, which basically set the prosecutors up to offer him a plea deal, which he didn't want to take because he wasn't guilty. He was basically manhandled into coming into a guilty plea in that case. Well, the reason that it's especially upsetting to me is because I believe that this case should be tried in front of a court. I think that we should be able to hear the evidence. I think that we shouldn't be trying to coerce people with a not guilty plea to take a guilty plea. And I think that the reason they did that is because they knew how weak their evidence was, and they didn't want to have to call on witnesses, and they didn't want to show the public how weak their evidence was. And so after the trial, and most of my presumptions about this came from what the dad's attorney said after the hearing where they pled guilty. And he said that the prosecutor had pitted his family against him and that he had no choice to take a guilty plea to protect his family, which is a big claim for an attorney to make about a state prosecutor. The state prosecutor, Reinhart, he refused to comment on it. He refused to comment on the timing of the plea negotiations, which took place less than 1 day before the trial. So it was explosive. It was upsetting. My day yesterday was very intense. But all of this goes.
BX,
yeah, go ahead.
I hate to cut you off. I just we're running out of time here. I want to give people, because I know that you go into this in a lot more detail in the videos that you're producing. So I want to make sure that my audience has a chance to know exactly where to find you and follow you on Rumble as well as on X. If you can drop that for us, that way they can find you better. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And, I know it's kind of dense, but I think I did a pretty good job of breaking it down in my video, which I will link to you as soon as I find it in my Discord chat, when I probably should have had it already there.
That's okay.
Yeah, what I want to say is, there's a lot of us who've really been working hard to get answers for people, to get transparency, to talk about what's happening, open up an honest conversation about these shootings so that we can prevent them. And I would really, I really wish people would support independent investigators, independent journalists, the smaller fish who have a lot of big things to say, because we're out there trying to change things. We just really need your help.
Absolutely. And BX, we're glad that you joined us this morning. Thank you for being so generous with your time and joining us here so early. And it's good to see you again. We hope to have you back again real soon.
Thanks. And I put the Rumble link in chat. So if you guys are interested in that story, you guys can go watch the video there.
Thank you very much, BX. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Austin. Bye.
Thank you. What do you think of BX on X? Click like and subscribe if you enjoy that kind of content. Well, we've got even more great content to go. Camellia Peterson, maybe on the road, I think, actually. She's going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. What's she talking about? Amy Hamm, she's a nurse from British Columbia, going through a multiple day-long struggle session. Why? Because she committed the crime of saying there's two genders. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It was 1946. A battle was fought, not overseas, but right here on American soil. The Battle of Athens, an intense struggle against election fraud and for the rights promised by our founding fathers. Driven by the Second Amendment, ordinary citizens stood tall and fought back. Help us expose this momentous battle of integrity and bravery. Your support can make a difference. Visit givesendgo.com/bleedamerican and pledge your support, because we believe in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the spirit of we the people. Let us not forget, we bleed American.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning. Guten Morgen. Meine Damen und Herren. Austin Peterson here on the Wake Up America show. It's America. Speak American. We did talk to somebody from Paris earlier, but they didn't speak that Paris talk. They spoke very good English, actually. It's been a great show so far. Wouldn't you agree? My next guest, she's not from Gay Paris, some might say. She's from Southwest Missouri, but we do have a lot of French-named towns here in the state of Missouri. There were some French influences, of course. Remember back in Napoleonic era, from Louisiana all the way up to Missouri, from the Mississippi. So there's been, in Missouri, there's been a little bit of a French influence, right? Saint Louis, anybody? But I don't think anybody down in Joplin so much really has that French connection. Joining us now to discuss anything but what I was just introducing is our regular Tuesday, Thursday guest, friend of the show, and big supporter, probably our number one fan, Camellia Peterson, joining us live. What's up, CJ?
Of course. Hey, so is it Duquesne or Duchesne?
Oh, God, it's Duchesne. Duchesne. Is it Versailles or is it Versailles?
Versailles.
God, no. Is it Japan or is it Japan?
Oh, my word. That's bad.
Isn't that horrible? I mean, Japan's down your way, though, isn't it?
I don't know. Is it? I tell you what, I discover new Missouri towns all the time that I didn't know existed, these little ones, and there are some wild names out there.
No, it's true. Japan, Missouri, and that's how they pronounce it. It's in southwest Franklin County in Missouri, right? So it's located
Okay.
Yes, it's southwest Franklin County, on Route AE, southwest or northwest of Sullivan. So, but it's not called Japan, it's Japan.
Japan. All right.
And it's not called Joplin, it's Joplin.
Oh, is that it? Right. Okay. Oh, Lord.
Hey, speaking of the foreign countries, this morning I'm reading this story from British Columbia. A nurse from British Columbia is going through like the 17th or 18th day of a struggle session for admitting the obvious. What's the news here?
Right. So this nurse, and the thing is like this started from not anybody that she was treating, no patients, no families of patients. This is from two completely unrelated people who I believe had seen a billboard that she and a friend of hers had put up that was an I Heart J.K. Rowling billboard. And so that launched this whole investigation into her and that 300 and some odd page report that you mentioned. And she's been active on social media, and all because she says that there are two genders.
Okay, well, so she admits the obvious, but I mean, they're coming after her, like lighting into her, right? So this is something they basically want her to. They claim that she disseminated medically inaccurate information.
Right.
Then they dropped that charge in June of 2022. Yes. The most recent charge, they allege the nurse made discriminatory and derogatory statements regarding transgender people as a nurse or nurse educated. She's received tens of thousands of messages that have threatened her with hate and abuse. And she says that free speech and women's rights are worth every battle that come our way. I mean, this is in candidates. Kind of scary stuff, because I know people want to bring this to the United States.
Sure. And, one of the things that she pointed out is if she's so dangerous and such a threat to the patients that she is treating, why are they still allowing her to work? Why haven't they fired her? So, it's a good point. And I know that we have seen a lot of pushback against this kind of thing, and it's been encouraging. Legislation has been going through all across the country in states that protect children from, chemical and surgical transition procedures while they're still minors. Um, but I think it's important not to let up when we get some of these victories, because the other side of this issue will, they're in it for the long haul. They're going to keep pressing on this. And I really think one of the things that needs to happen, and I'm not sure where this is in the process, it's been a little bit since I've heard anything on it. I don't know if it was Chloe Cole, or if it was somebody else who had detransitioned, who had actually filed a lawsuit against the physicians who had done the surgery. But that is what really needs to happen, is we need a court victory that hits them where it hurts in their pocketbooks, because they can sit in their ivory tower spouting all of these things like it's an ideology, and like they're caring for the health of, their patients. But the bottom line is, honestly, they're capitalists like the rest of us. They just don't want to admit it. And if you want to shut them up, you need to hit them where it hurts.
You love to hear that. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to Camellia Peterson. We are not related. Check that last name. That's an S-O-N, heretic, and I'm an S-E-N. Click like and subscribe. Come back and join us every Tuesday and Thursday if you want to hear Camellia, because she's a regular guest at 8 a.m. Central Time. Camellia Peterson joins the show, and we're glad to have her here today. So it seems that the transgender debate has taken a bit of a back seat here in the United States with all the discussion about foreign policy and things like that. I know you're probably relieved to be talking about something other than transgenderism. Although I do see you watching intently these discussions and debates about, the debates that I engaged in with Dave Smith, for example.
Sure.
And I note that you said clearly that, you don't always agree with me on a lot of things. But your point that you made that was in agreement with what I said about having ideas or listening to people or having friends outside of your ideology is probably a wise idea. Would you like to expand on that?
I don't even understand why, especially among libertarians, this is even a question. Like, libertarians are supposed to be open-minded, right? We're supposed to be always accepting new information and basing, our views on that new information. We're rational people, right? We reason our way through things. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it so much, right? And so the more I've looked at this and watched the behavior, and granted, it's not all libertarians, but it's the loudest ones for sure. And a lot of the most popular ones, you see this being popularized, is there's a whole lot of things that are emotion based. And that debate with Dave Smith that you were talking about when I watched this, the one thing that it's the common thread through every single person that I've seen argue like he does is like they never have an answer for what should Israel have actually done in response. Because we can talk about who's originally responsible from here to kingdom come, and it doesn't change the facts right now as they stand. And so I've never heard any options given. And that makes no sense to me. That's like expecting someone to just let someone break into their house and do nothing. No, don't call the cops. I don't know. Israel is the cops, right?
That's why I criticize the NAP has sort of become the non-retaliation principle to an extent. But I think the problem, of course, is that many libertarians are choosing the bad guys and saying that the bad guys are the good guys and the good guys are actually the bad guys, which of course just means that we're not going to agree on those things, and I have a wall of separation. But I think maybe the problem is that your belief in libertarianism as a rational philosophy rather than just an ideology like everything else, right? Maybe it's better to just consider that true rationalism or liberalism really is the open-minded philosophy. But if you are a strict libertarian, then what you're really saying there is I believe in this right or wrong, and I'm unwilling to change my views on things. See, my thing is, this is why I'm such a heretic, not only to, all organized religions, but to all orthodoxies and any kind of organized dogma whatsoever, is because I always probably, maybe every 5 years, maybe even like fewer, maybe every 2 or 3 years, I go back over everything that I believe and I re-examine and I listen and I read things that I disagree with and I consider that I might be wrong. And the reason why I do that is because I spent the first half of my career in politics confirming my biases, right? And engaging in the same hero worship and the same blind ideological sort of behavior that I see so many of these, new ideologues engaging in. And then I've spent the last 7 or 8 years now going back and saying, wow, I need to re-examine my beliefs because I actually, am one of the people who have friends that don't agree with I have friends who are not libertarians. I have friends who are committed ideologues in another philosophy and ideology. I have friends who are committed Marxists. I have friends who are committed neoconservatives, or, I have friends who are committed conservative Christians, and I am not a conservative Christian, if you will. But so many libertarians act like they have nothing to learn from people that they disagree with. Dave said, you need fewer neocon friends. Okay, well, it's easy to say that, maybe you need to have some friends, right? How can all your friends possibly completely agree with you? If so, there's a problem. It's an echo chamber.
Right.
And I think that's why we are becoming an even more marginal movement, if you will.
Well, so tribalism is everywhere. Libertarians are certainly not exempt from that. And the thing is one thing that you hear in libertarian circles over and over and over is this rejection of binary thinking. I think they're guilty of binary thinking as it is because there is no nuance in the arguments that they're making. And so everybody wants to, everybody wants to think that they have the answer or they have their own version of utopia or that there's an explanation for something that somebody has to be to blame. Honestly, I've seen this. We were talking about a little bit in the chat yesterday where, on the right with conservatives, you're constantly seeing the stuff around Trump as there being the deep state conspiracies and it's almost like we, the people, have no power or control over anything because somebody is out here orchestrating everything.
It's the CIA.
And to me, right.
The deep state's why I can't get a girlfriend.
Right. So I think that both libertarians and conservatives, oh gosh, I mean, they're all guilty of this. And I think that really what this boils down to, and I was thinking through this yesterday, is this is a victimhood mindset. It allows us to not take responsibility for selecting good leaders, for doing our work to make change at the local level, because those are people that move up into these positions of power. Ladder climbing, that's the name of the game in politics, right?
The Jews are why I can't get a date. I really liked, right. You might have missed this when I spoke to Pascal Emmanuel Gobry earlier. He was talking about we was Kangs. Have you ever seen the we was Kangs meme?
No, I don't think so.
We was Kangs. So have you ever heard of Black liberation theology?
Yes.
So Black liberation theology is the idea that the reason why the Black people around the world are oppressed or the reason why the Black people around the world suffer and are struggling is because they're being oppressed by white people, and that they used to be the kings of the world, and that the Black people created the pyramids, and that they're spaceships that helped them come down, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a meme that goes around, and it's where they say we was kangs until the white people came along and took away our gerbs, or what you will. And it's kind of the same thing with where you see white people, right, where they're like, when they blame things on the Jews, it's somebody else's fault. We was kangs until the Jews came along and destroyed our Catholic, liberation theology, right? We was kangs. It's somebody else's responsible. The Jews, the Blacks, the Palestinians. It's everybody else's fault but our own for the problems that we face, and including up to and including why we can't get a chick.
Yeah, it's just frustrating to see it because maybe this is kind of a cyclical progression of where we are as a society and a country that has been, mostly free and capitalistic. And so people have gotten comfortable, but it's so antithetical to the American ideal and the principles that this country was founded on, because this country was founded on the fact that, like, we don't need you. We can do this by ourselves, and we don't want to pay your taxes. And, you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, so to speak. I'm not saying that we don't ever need to work as communities or need each other. We do need each other, but we also need to take responsibility for our lot in life. And I feel like even on the right, are getting further and further away from that. I think that's where we see this national populism taking off on the right too, where we think that, well, the government is the answer and the government should take care of us, but just for the things that matter to us. Like, we want to be free in the areas we want to be free, but if it's our own moral issue or it's our own side, well, then it's okay to use the authority of government to, move things our way. Just so frustrating.
I love this stuff. This is such great conversation. Camellia, I don't want to let Josh Hawley off the hook here. I shared an article. I know you want to talk smack. I shared an article with you from the Wall Street Journal yesterday called Josh Hawley's Constitution. What's this article in this story?
So this is something I saw pop up a couple of days ago. And basically, Josh Hawley, Missouri U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, has introduced legislation that would repeal Citizens United, which in 2010, the Supreme Court made a decision in Citizens United versus the FEC that basically allowed corporations to do campaign donations. And so he is like, Obama wanted to repeal that. Now Josh Hawley wants to repeal that because he wants to get corporate money out of our politics. And this is just like, this is one thing in a long string of things, and especially lately from Senator Hawley, that has been increasingly disturbing because it's more and more authoritarian. And the one thing that really jumped out at me when I first started, this whole article, by the way, is just full of gems. It's so good just to read on its own, regardless of whether it applies to Josh Hawley or not. But one of the things that is pointed out in here is that his legislation applies to corporations, but not to labor unions. And so, because in that original ruling, labor unions were included in that along with corporations, but he would exempt those. And the reason that caught my eye is because with the UAW workers going on strike, and that's affected things here in Missouri as well. The squad came down and stood in solidarity at one of the plants here in Missouri, I think Wentzville. And then the next day, Josh Hawley was at the same plant standing in solidarity with the UAW strikers as well. So I was like,
you're grinding your teeth, aren't you?
So, I mean, the thing is like he's
just
openly
making friends outside of his ideology. He's just
right,
listening to people he disagrees with.
Right. If only the policy wasn't going right along with it, because now he's openly opposing right to work. And, he's posting pictures where he's meeting with the head of the labor unions and kind of this power photo out there. And I think the messaging just seems very clear. At this point, I'm kind of wondering why he doesn't just switch parties. Because
Camellia, you are so triggered by him.
Well, this is true. But I'm not going to. So the thing is, though, but I will tell you, Josh Hawley is well loved in Missouri. Yes. And I think that's all over the state. And, people, and I understand a lot of things, and there have been things that Josh Hawley has stood alone on and been a voice for that I have agreed with him on.
Thank you, yes.
So it's not on everything. There have been things, but the things that he has been pushing are just so egregiously anti-free market and anti-capitalism and anti-freedom that it just kind of rises above all of that. And one of the things that shocks people who are talking about how much they love Josh Hawley, and I say, well, do you know, he voted for more spending than Bernie Sanders, and they're just like, no way.
That's the thing, but here's the thing, Camellia. The problem is people, you can't logic people out of a position they didn't logic themselves into, right? So like people feel their politics. They feel like Josh Hawley is nice. And they also, if other people in the community like him because he seems like such a nice boy, then they're going to like him too. And he's got an R after his name. It doesn't matter what the policies are. It doesn't matter how much money he spends. It doesn't matter that he has the talking points or the economic talking points of Bernie Sanders. It doesn't matter because people really, they feel their politics. They don't think them through. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And this is what I think is actually, it's difficult to persuade people on the right of that fact, because it is a fact, is that, because we're like, facts don't care about your feelings. And well, actually, your feelings kind of care a lot.
Yeah, well, it's true. No, that's the thing, is that both sides are guilty of that one there, because everybody feels their politics instead of thinking it through. Camellia Peterson, you are a very rare flower, a very rare camellia, as we like to say. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners before we let you go?
Well, the only thing I would say, and kind of coming out of this your feelings diatribe, is that is why we really have to get better at messaging. We have a marketing problem, and this is a problem that the liberty movement has, is we have a marketing problem in selling our ideas. So we have to get better at that. That's something I get to do a lot.
Obviously, we need to continue to double down on heroin to 5-year-olds and dancing naked on the stage. And it's people like Austin that are inoffensive to your mother and grandmother that are really the problem. Camellia Peterson, thank you very much for your time today.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too. What do you guys think of Camellia Peterson? Send us a text at 573-319-1586.
There are illiberal beliefs that are held by vast numbers of Muslim people that I don't think
vast number of Christians too.
No, that's not true. Not true. Vast numbers of Christians do not believe that if you leave the Christian religion, you should be killed for it. Vast numbers of Christians do not treat women as second-class citizens. Vast numbers of Christians
I agree with that.
Do not believe that if you draw a picture of Jesus Christ, you should get killed for it. So yes, does ISIS do Khmer Rouge-like activities where they just kill people indiscriminately who aren't just like them? Yes. And would most Muslim people in the world do that or condone that? No. But most Muslim people in the world do condone violence just for what you think. They do. First of all, they say it. They shout it from the
vast majorities of Muslims.
Absolutely.
Say that?
There's a Pew poll of Egypt done a few years ago. 82%, I think it was, said stoning is the appropriate punishment for adultery. Over 80% thought death was the appropriate punishment for leaving the Muslim religion. I'm sure you know these things.
I know. Well, I do. But I
don't. That this religion is like other religions is just naive and plain wrong. It is not like other religions. The New York Times pointed out in an op-ed a couple of weeks ago that in Saudi Arabia, just since August 4th, I think it was, they have beheaded 19 people. Most for non-violent crimes, including homosexuality.
Those that got the hands off the thief.
Right. Okay. So we're upset that ISIS is beheading people, which we should be upset about. But Saudi Arabia does it, and they're our good friends because they have oil.
Right.
Okay? But they do it, too. This is the center of the religion. I'm not saying...
They're now fighting against ISIS, too. They're joining us in the fight, as is the Emirates.
Well, they are both fighting ISIS, and they are for ISIS.
Well, not the government. I mean, some of the private
But, I mean, in Mecca, where infidels, non-Muslims, are not even allowed in the holy parts of the city. I mean, right there, we don't have that example in other religions. Okay, they do behead people. Now, if they were beheading people in Vatican City, which is the equivalent of Mecca in... Don't you think there'd be a bigger outcry about it? So this is the soft...
Yes, I do, Bill, and I'm thankful that somebody's pointing it out. So you know me, you know that I believe that all of the metaphysical claims of the world's religions are equally false, but I do not believe that all of the world's religions are equally anti-libertarian. And since I believe in individual liberty and limited government and the concept of liberalism, good liberty, right, good liberalism, then I have to stand against Islam as it is currently organized today. More and more people have to wake up to the fact that this ideology, as well as a religion, which Sharia, if you understand what it is a total package, an entire way to live your life from beginning to end, telling you exactly how you should act and behave in every single situation. It is the end all be all. That must be resisted. That is anti-individual liberty as it stands. It's not Islamophobic to suggest that the religion of Islam is inherently violent and leads to more terror and more danger and creates a more dangerous world for us to live in. That's, if it were a form of Islamophobia, it'd be like the sheep suggesting that, oh, the sheep has wolfophobia. Well, I wonder why a sheep might have wolfophobia, but it's apparently clear that for all of us, for the civilized world, for the liberal world, for the Western world, and the ideals and principles that we champion, that we should stand up for what we believe in now before these things are lost. I'd like to ask those of you who are watching and listening right now to do me a favor, click that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the content that you're seeing and hearing this morning. And I would also like to reach out to those of you, perhaps like the Floby Tendersons of the world or the Blue Trikes of the world who are listening and watching us this morning, or the JJ 4884s, for example, Barney Styles. If you aren't already, for those of you who are on the Rumble chat, if you aren't already a monthly subscriber to the Wake Up America show, I'd like to ask for you today to become one. And to support the Wake Up America show. And remember that here it does take, for people like Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, for me to spend the time to get those guests here and to produce this show. It does take a lot of time, energy, and effort, getting up very early, Monday through Friday to bring the show. And I would love it if you would make a small contribution today, a monthly contribution, even in the amount of $5 or more, to help support the Wake Up America show. And just a reminder, for those of you who are already monthly subscribers, don't forget, you do have a 20% discount at ap4libertyshop.com. And as well, if you're a $17.76 a month subscriber or more over at our website, then you're going to get a Christmas card this year. So if you are a monthly subscriber at a $17.76 support level or more, then you're on our Christmas card list, so you should expect a really nice card from Stephanie and I this year. So if you're not already a monthly subscriber, I'd like to ask you, if you've been watching the show and enjoying it for some time, to either subscribe here on Rumble as a monthly subscriber to the show at rumble.com/AP4Liberty, or if you can't do it right now because you're on a cell phone, and I know that it's a little bit of a challenge to make Rumble Rant donations or to become monthly subscribers, do me a favor and go to wakeupamerica.show.com/support. Become at least a $5 a month supporter. Don't tread on AP or a Freedom Ninja supporter on a monthly level. That would be great. But if you make a $17.76 a month donation, not only do you get on the Christmas card list, not only do you get the 20% discount, but you also get a free gift from ap4libertyshop.com just for going ahead and becoming that monthly subscriber. So if you have already, no problem. I see Barney Styles says he gave at the office. No problem. Very funny. Andy Opperman donated $10, says thank you very much, and says phobia is an irrational fear. There are legitimate reasons to fear Islam. The term Islamophobia is an oxymoron. Appreciate that. Floby Tenderson says, you get my Bitcoin, bro. That's true. I remember that. I sometimes forget who donated what where, so I was just like picking out people at random. So I do know most of you are already subscribers and donors. And if that's the case, then of course, what do I have to say to you? Thank you very much. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. Corey and Callie, he's a monthly subscriber. Thank you. If you haven't gotten, by the way, your 20% discount to the shop, hit me up on Twitter or send me a text to the text line at 573-319-1586. You can text us again at 573-319-1586. Tell me your name when you text me and say, hey, I haven't gotten my discount code, and I will send you your discount code. Floby Tenderson, yeah, you did your Bitcoin donation, I remember. You got your 20% discount code, right, for the shop? Just want to make sure everybody's got them if you're a monthly subscriber. And Floby Tenderson, by the way, we are going to need to get your name and address because you obviously are going to be on the Christmas card list as well. Everybody who wants to get on the Christmas list, got to do it now because we're going to have a cutoff date at this point soon. So make sure that you let us know, who you are, your name, your address, if you are a 1776 supporter. If you don't have your 20% discount code, now's the time to hit us up and say, hey, Austin, love the show. I've been a member for a while, haven't got my discount code, and I need that. And also, don't forget, put me on that Christmas card list because I'm a $17.76 a month or higher subscriber. Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. So don't forget, send us a text night or day, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. All right, cool. Got to run. It was a great show, great audience, great topics. Love you guys. Rah, rah, rah. Like and subscribe. Luke Sacker, sorry for tuning in the very end. Don't worry, brother. You get to go back and watch it later. And we appreciate that very much. We'll see you guys tomorrow, Wednesday, which means it's big brain time with the judge. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Central Time, Judge Napolitano joins us. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No. And we'll see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender. I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight. Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionado avocados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at apforlibertyshop.com.